Hey, how's it going, everybody? Good, I suppose. It's Saturday, and we're drilling down on, I think this is Power Hour 275, I believe it is. So I'll look at it here in a second. There should be a lot of you here today. We're going to talk about simulation, and we're from both a flight instructor perspective and from just a pilot perspective. So there'll be a lot of good goodies in here for you. Um, I have a little technological issues with Zoom today and with my iPad of all things. So hopefully that'll get resolved here. We can't do anything about the Zoom. Those of you who are delayed getting in, it's because we can't undo the waiting room. It's just not letting us. So it's a switch setting. We'll have to do something. We'll do it later. Can't do it right now. So anyway, welcome if you're new. I'm here in Miami Beach, and I'm the director of training at CFI Bootcamp. So that means I do all the academics, and I can also do flight, but I typically don't do the flight anymore. That's for somebody else. I have 16,000 hours of flight time. A little too much of a good thing, I say. So, so I just stay out of the airplanes as much as I can. Although if I need to, it's okay to do. It's not a problem. So my goal is to. I think one guy said it best when I was at Advantage Aviation. He knows that I try to avoid the airplane myself, but my flight instructors they love it. That's great. So one guy, the chief pilots, they have a meeting every month, I think it is, and it shows like who billed the most flight time, right? And so I was the least of the whole clan. And so he says, I want you guys to see something. And so there are people all around. He says, Johnny Ha again wins for 130 hours of flight time billed this month. And their advantage, we're all contract pilots, so we basically keep our own stuff. So he said, but look here, he said, look at this guy. He said he has the lowest, right? The lowest time billed, 3 hours. He said, but he made more money than all of you. And that is true, right? That's true. That was fun. So anyway, that's my thing on it. So yeah, I'm starting a 7-day class on Monday, so that'll be fun. And I love doing the academics because it's never boring to me. So I don't know that I can really offer much in the flight side, and that anybody else can't show you. But on the ground side, I'm your man right there. And we have something to talk about at the break. The format of the show will go like this. We'll get started now. Um, we're going to go to about the bottom of the hour. We take a 5-minute break, and there'll be a guy in here named Rex Scholl, who is one of our boot camp instructors, going to talk for a few minutes. I'm going to tell you about a product we released, which is like super cool, and one other one we're working on, and I'll just leave it at that. And we're also doing some edits to some of our products. There's new versions of them coming out, so that's really good. I'll tell you about that at the break time, and then we'll go to the top of the hour, finish out the show, and then I'll close it out, and we'll stop the recording and all that stuff. And then what we'll do is we'll open up the room then for open mic. So if you have things you want to ask, I know that you guys like to use the chat. That's where you want to be paying attention, by the way, for Wings credit. It'll be in the chat. That's the only way to get it. So if you ask me, like, here's my email, I don't care. We're not going to do it. It's just too much work. So you got to do the chat. Just click onto it, put your email, and then it does it automatically. And it'll happen usually within a day or so. So we upload that stuff to four or 500 of you to FAA. So that's the way it goes. Okay, so that's the format of it, and then we'll keep the room open basically for as long as there are people around. We've had people. Last time I think we went to it's noon. We closed the room about 5:30, maybe 6 o'clock at night. So people just want to talk about things, and it's your platform. You can say whatever you want in those open hour times. But now let's get into what we want to talk about today, which you came for, which is going to be in our series of using technology. That's what it's going to be. And let me move some things out of the way so I can make sure you can all see clearly. And we're going to talk about simulation and sim versus airplane. What to use and what to do first is kind of the topic, but we'll have other things to say in here. It'll be pretty comprehensive. You're going to see some things in here, some things you definitely don't know. So that's a good thing. And if iPad is going to cooperate with me today, then I'm going to be able to give you a tour of some apps that we use at CFI Bootcamp that really help out with this sort of thing, that are very inexpensive, yet do the job. So you'll see those. Hopefully, I got it to work here, but I'm having trouble with the iPad and settings. It doesn't just crashes, doesn't ever let me change the settings. So hopefully, if the settings are still fine, we're fine. So it'll be a trip to the Apple Store. Yeah. So there's that. I spent 3.5 hours a couple days ago in the Apple Store for this this thing that broke, and so I had to get another one, and so I had to set everything up. It was a pain. All right, let's look. So I'm really into technology. I understand it quite well. So my background is in technology. So that's it's three and a half hours, and you understand. Here's what we're going to cover: basic simulator considerations. And by the way, we're going to talk about this word sim because this is a buzzword that we use within our community. And it does have a real meaning. And the if you say simulator, this is not what we have. We don't have those. We do, but not by the FAA definition of them. So, but when we say sim or AATD or these words, these all mean for us the same thing. We're not believing that we're going to go to a flight school and have a full motion simulator sitting in there, right? With big 3 stories, 10 stories high. We don't have that expectation. But that's what a sim is. A simulator is a full motion level D or level A through D sim. But we say that because that's just what we say. So when you hear that simulator, you'll see in a second what this means. So then we're going to cover advanced aviation training devices, which is mostly what you're going to see. So AATDs typically are the one on the right. That's an Embry-Riddle. That's a wraparound screen. It's 130 some degrees. 135. And then this is the one in the middle is also an AET, believe it or not. It has full functioning controls and all that. You don't see all of them. And so those are AATDs, advanced aviation training devices. And then a BATD, a basic aviation training device, is maybe what's on the left-hand side. It doesn't quite qualify. It doesn't have an enclosure. It doesn't have this, doesn't have that. So then certain times can be credited and certain times can't, depending on the rating and certificate you're trying to achieve. But we're going to be mostly talking about the AATDs and what we can do with them here. So let's get more into it here. We're going to cover what a letter of authorization is. Any training device that you're going to use, you're going to have to find the letter of authorization because it's what approves what you can do and what you can't do in the training device and get credit for it. Okay, so we'll talk about that. We're going to talk about how to log AATD time in a logbook. It's not so obvious. When we get in there, you'll see it's not so obvious. We'll talk about some limits on technology, and I did a lot of work in this region. So, and I wouldn't say a lot of work. I was involved in a lot of work in the technological limitations of flight training devices and level D sims, what we can do with them. So I'll tell you about my experience with that and what we discovered when I was at NASA Ames in doing some research in motion, not motion, many things, and what we had come to conclude. All right, so is that. Let's move on past that. We're going to talk about using a sim for VFR ratings. Why would we ever want to do such a thing? Is it valuable? What pieces are, what aren't. Then we're going to talk about for IFR. That should be obvious. That's what they were designed for originally. So they're going to have a lot of pushback on this one, only in a few places, right? Then we're going to talk about how to make simulation more realistic by using external services like Pilot Edge. We'll talk about what that is. It's air traffic control communications live in your simulator. And then using ForeFlight with your sim. If your sim has a GPS, basically broadcast output, then you can attach that to your ForeFlight, and it'll be just like you were in a real airplane. And that can go a long way. So there's that. Let's move on past. We're going to also cover instructors that avoid simulation and why. That. And then we'll talk about iPad apps that really work, that save pilots time and make CFIs money. So I'm going to show you those. You'll spend a tiny bit of money it'll be really worth your while to have these apps. The problem with the apps is that a 14-year-old kid can develop an app, right? And so you'll get it. You think it's the best thing in the world. Then he'll never support it because he's going off to high school, right? Or he wants to go on vacation. So they're never going to support this app. So, and certain things are just way too complicated. So you don't know that until you have it in front of you. Maybe you read the reviews, maybe you don't, but they're those things. So I've already vetted all these. So these apps that I'm going to show you, we've been using for years, and they're the best ones that we can find. Okay, and we probably don't look as much as we should because we just like these, and I think you will too. So we'll show you those in a second. Okay, so let's move on. Yeah, let's move on here. Ching. And also we'll answer the question, do home simulators help? Those that you can cobble together yourself, or just the basic thing, does that help at all? Is there any negative transfer of learning that goes on there? We'll talk about that. So now let's get into it. So we're going to talk about some basic considerations. We talk about using flight training devices. Well, one of them is the cost, right? So AATDs will cost some money. They're going to be in the region of $70,000 and higher. About the starting in that general price range. So not every school is going to want to make that investment, especially if they don't do maybe much instrument training. But if a school does a fair amount of instrument training, it's almost a shame you're leaving money on the table by not having a flight training device, because you can use these things during periods of bad weather, where you couldn't fly, maintenance issues. There are many things that you could make up lessons or such in a flight training device. So you see that quite a lot of them, and you see them in various flavors. I mean, there's everything from precision flight controls is one, a manufacturer, Frasca, that used to be the biggest one. Then Redbird is another one, along with others, right? There are plenty of others. So the idea here is that what you're going to be able to do with it, you'll see, is on the letter of authorization, and how you can utilize it will be what we're going to kind of concentrate on for this time. We also want to talk about the fidelity of the training device. So the fidelity means how realistic it is, what its tactile position is. If it's like in the Redbirds, my complaint about Redbird, well, I really like those people. Charlie, he has a lot of our CFI Bootcamp products, the CEO, he did his CFI. And Jerry, the guy, one of the original founders, and along with the rest of them, Fuller's there now. So anyway, these people are outstanding individuals, and they've really pushed technology well. But I don't like that it's not a real G1000. I understand they want to pop out screens and put a different screen in, and that was kind of the trade-off. But tactically, it's not one-to-one, and I do like the one-to-one tactile feel of certain things when I'm doing certain things. And what I and then the fidelity also is the aerodynamic modeling. How's that going, right? So we have like how realistic is this training device? And then of course the other consideration is how much of this could be counted toward a rating or an endorsement or a currency, something like that. That's kind of what we want to consider a little bit. We have some other things here. We also want to have just a talk about the aerodynamic modeling. So one of the things I did was that I did this modeling for some things, aerodynamic stuff for airplanes. So I done that. We all talk about graphics and display perspectives. So these have really come up and hard, way better visuals than we had before. And it's only been a short period of time. So a lot of times the modeling doesn't really keep track with the display capabilities. And some other things come into there. So we'll talk about that. And we'll also talk about this is very technical talk, but just a few minutes on modeling the momentum of the airplane. That's what I mostly did. We had these simulators at Ames that weren't modeling the motion of the jets very well. They would just, as soon as a controller, you would give a instruction, it would start turning immediately. It didn't consider the airplane, its weight, and how long it was going to take to react to such inputs. So those kind of things. And then we can talk about the older flight training devices and where they lack, that kind of thing. So when we have definitions, all flight training devices, every single one out there, are called a flight simulation training device, FSTDs. And they're governed under Part 60 of the regulations. So Part 60 lays out how you would get one certified, what they can be used for, what has to be done periodically. It gives everything that you'd ever want to know about that. And there's a whole division within FAA that does that. And it's very interesting that there used to be a general aviation division. There is not now. They've merged all that into there. There's only one person that represents us in that whole field. The rest of it are level D or higher sim. So there's one person that's taking care of that. Maybe they have an assistant now, but that was what it was at the time. So full motion simulators, level D sims in particular, those really we're not going to see flight simulators around for us unless we're doing type ratings, or like at Flight Safety, SimCom, something like that, or CAE. We're not going to really see a lot of that. We're going to mostly see AATDs, Advanced Aviation Training Devices, which is why we're going to concentrate on that. So that's that. So at NASA Ames, we have a level D 747-400 sim, and that's in the high bay there by Future Flight, and it's fully functional. And there's also the equivalent of an Airbus sim there as well. And these things can all talk to each other. We can manage the control tower, which is their simulated control tower, the pseudopilot lab, air traffic control labs, all together to do simulations. And so And there's also the vertical motion sim, which is a separate facility, and that used to be the old space shuttle sim. So it goes up really high, goes that way really far, and there's a lot of stuff that's in there. So all those things could be used in simulation, and so that's why I have a little bit of background, participate in a lot of that stuff over there. So BATD is a basic aviation training device, and you can only log 10 hours toward an instrument rating by using such a thing. Again, every one of these tests has have a letter of authorization, which will come to the AATD, which is the most common. Like you see the Redbirds, those are AATDs. You see the Frasca, and they're all the ones that are in a flight school are either BATDs or they're AATDs. And then you can log up to 20 hours towards the instrument rating for those. And if you're doing commercial, you can actually have logged and use 50 hours of flight training device time. So if you did a full instrument rating, got 20 hours out of it, you could do another 30, and that has to be dual instruction. And then but you could log it towards the commercial 250 hours. So that's quite good. Almost all flight training devices in flight schools are AATDs. Okay. This is a letter of authorization. This is for Precision Flight Controls, which is basically in Sacramento, California, Mather. And every sim is going to need one of these. And what's approved for that sim is going to be located on this letter by FAR. So if you look at the letter, kind of, if you can see it a little bit, you'll see that it basically says, here's your authorization for this training device. And these are the specific things that you can do with it. So if you read this whole one on this particular one, you would see circle to land would not be allowed, or landings would not be allowed to be used by this sim. Also, anything to do with CFII is not mentioned by regulation, so therefore it can't be done. So everything has to be listed by regulation. So you'll see they even talk about Part 141 stuff, the appendices that would qualify. These letters will have an expiration date, and they have to be periodically reevaluated by the FSDO, whoever your jurisdiction is, in order to be able to use it. Now, it depends on the FSDO as to how they do it. I can tell you how ours does it. So what they do is they say, go ahead and have the sim perform its self-test, right? Make sure you start reboot it and do a complete self-test. And if it passes the self-test, send us that, and that will be grounds for us to regrant the letter, because obviously it's passed the self-test. It meets the requirements. Other people want to come in and fly it. So it just depends on your FSDO. But this letter has to be valid when you're conducting your one account training towards a rating endorsement or currency. Okay, so that's the number one thing to know, is you got to find this letter. Sometimes they hang them up on the wall, or they do various things, and So we have 525 people in the room so far. That's typical. For logging sim time, you need the serial number of the AATD to do this. And it's very interesting because you log the point of departure is not places you logged instrument approaches. It's the location of the sim, the physical location. So, for example, at Palo Alto, if I'm doing instrument approaches, I don't know, in Tokyo, I'm still going to say KPAO to KPAO in the logbook. And then I'm going to also put in the serial number of the flight training device. And then you can log it towards simulated instrument time, dual receive, and total time. It's not going to count towards like airplane time or things of that nature. This is an excerpt from IFR magazine, which did a write-up on that. So that be where you could, as a resource for you. There's also a legal interpretation out about it as well. But that's the idea. In terms of technological limitations, okay, this is where the rubber hits the road, right? Because we say, well, we talked about the fidelity of the flight training device. And ideally, you would like to be in a situation where there's no difference. The pilot wouldn't feel any different flying the sim or flying the airplane. The only thing that is still corrupted in that process is the person. The person would not know they were in a flight training. If you could do that, if you could pull that off, you say, I don't know if you're in an airplane or a flight training device. You would get the fidelity that good. It sort of blindfold them. And this way is to the airplane, that way is to the flight training device. And then we can't, right? So in general, it means I know I'm not going to die in the sim, so I can take some chances. It could be a little more laissez-faire, and maybe my decision making might be more corrupted. I might make different decisions had I been in the real airplane with the real fire, right? So these kind of things. So fidelity is creeping in there for sure. But we do have problems with aerodynamic modeling. because these training devices were really designed as procedural trainers for IFR, right? That's what they were designed for. There was never a thought that these things were really going to do anything with VFR flying. So most of them didn't even have the graphic display. They had a light that told you when you got the missed approach point turned red, right? And you had a cassette recorder that would walk you through, and in certain places, circuit boards would do certain very dedicated things on these old simulators, and there was no graphics at all, zero. So, the intention was, what did we need it for? IFR. So we didn't really need to see outside unless we needed to take off or land, right? Basically was the idea. So, so then also the aerodynamics only had to be really supported over a short range of speeds, cruise speed down to approach speed. Really, to pass that all the way down didn't matter. So those models weren't very good. And so they're very poor at low speeds, right? And then the graphics and displays. So that used to be also, remember, there was no graphics in the one I was talking. It was the ATC 610, ATC 510 simulators. You can still see those things probably in the Museum of Aviation somewhere. But yeah. So so moving on past that, the graphics have been display technology is so much better now. Each year even it's improving, and you only have to go to Best Buy or to Costco and look at the monitor technology and see what it looks like now, and see what it looked like 2 years ago. And the computer graphics capabilities and the number of graphics cards that are being supported, and the speed at which they're rendering. So all these things have come like an enormously long way. And yet we still aren't quite leveraging them to the extent we can because we have the FAA approval process in the way. If we do something, then we have to have approval again. And we got to meet the one guy who's at the FAA office and for simulation, right? So we have that to contend with. So we're always going to be behind the eight ball in terms of what's available for the regular market and what's available for a certified product, right? It doesn't mean we can't use those other things, though. We can come to that here in a little bit. We'll say. So the graphics and display. When I say display perspectives, what I mean is because you have a monitor that's only so big. Depending on how big the monitor is, will dictate the size of what you see. Whereas when you're looking out the window of an airplane, what you see is what you see. There isn't any way to scale that. Go, let's make it smaller, let me make it bigger. You have that, and so therefore, depending on the monitor you're using, you see things differently near the ground. And in flight, it's not so much, but down near the ground, you see things differently. So therefore, as we get closer and closer to the ground, the models become less and less useful because display technology has changed. Now we can change that, but there's some things to think about there. But I just want to get you to give you where the limitations are. Also, we have stick force per G issues in the training devices. What that means is that certified airplanes are designed in such a way that as you load the airplane, as you apply more load, the stick or the control wheel gets heavier. It gets heavier during the aerodynamic loading. And so that's called stick force per G. So, and that's a cue to you that something bad might be happening if it keeps getting heavier. So, and to let it go because it's heavy might be the best thing ever to do right now, right? Because you're loading up the airplane too much. So what they did sometimes with the older sims or even with ones today is they don't model that very correctly. They just put a spring in there, right? And so you pull, of course, the spring gets heavier, but that's not a true representation of the aerodynamics. That's just a set spring tension, right? It's not variable and there's no input to what you're doing. So that's why sometimes people will say, well, the sim doesn't respond the same way as the airplane does. That's one of the reasons right there. The other thing we have is the field of view. So most are limited to about 60 to 80 degrees out front. That's about the constraint, maybe even less right here. But what we really need is and if we want to really for these flight training devices to be as effective as we can and use them for as many cases as we can, they want to have about 135 degrees of view. That's what we want. And once you get to 135 degrees of view, then you'll see in the letters of authorization that that circling is approved. Because you can see. And landing might be approved, right? So you see, and also you can do more things. Like I was able to do ground reference maneuvers, traffic patterns, 8s on pylons, everything in the PFC flight training device at AirVenture because I could see, and it modeled pretty well. So I could use that to teach 8s on pylons. I could use that to teach chandelles, lazy eights, to an extent, depending on how good the model was. But there are things that we need the graphics to go 135 degrees if we really want the best result. Now, most of the time, we're not getting that. I would say in more than 95% of the cases, you're not going to go into flight school and find that. So that's a hope and dream, right? So we have to talk, we consider that as a limitation. Okay, so this is about one more minute for break time. Let's head here. So using a sim then for VFR rating. So because the issue we have is the big issue we have is this is two things. Number one, is the training in the sim going to translate to the airplane as close to one as we can get it? Or is it going to be that effective? So we have to answer that question. If not, then we say, okay, if it's not going to do that, which it's not going to, then we say, what benefits could we get? And are those worth the cost of the flight training device, or should we just save it for the airplane? That kind of, because some things may be kind of a bit of a waste of time to do in a flight training device because the modeling isn't there. And you're like, well, procedurally, yes, we could, but then we're spending $75 an hour for the sim. We spend 140 for the airplane, and we look at the difference and we say, how much of this are we going to have to, how much of it's going to transcend into the airplane? How much are we going to save? Or would it have been about the same if we just did it in the airplane and we had everything one-to-one there to begin with? That's really what we come down to, right? So that's what we're going to talk about at the end of the break. So what I want to do now is two things. I want to talk to you about a new product we have, which is called IFR Smart Study Pro. So this is an audio course that does have video, but it's audio based. It was designed by me. I took all the ACS for the instrument rating, every task, every element, knowledge element, every risk management element, every skill element. I voiced out what you should know about that. And so I made it so that it would be useful for you, like on your drive to the airport, if that were your lesson, non-precision approaches, whatever it would be, holding, whatever it would be. And then or as a recap on the way back. And then at the end, as a composite, let's go through the entire ACS for check right prep. So, and then I made PDF files, or we made, I should say our company made, PDF files for companion PDFs for all of those lessons with images and maybe some mnemonics, maybe some excerpts of various things that are in there to support that lesson when you're in a place where you could see. So that's available now. There's links in the chat for all that. That's called IFR Smart Study Pro. And now currently we're working on the commercial one. We already have private, that's done. We have CFI, that's done. And now we're working on the commercial one, which should be done video-wise in probably about 2 weeks or 3 weeks. So it won't be until next month or the month after for that's ready for prime time, but that'll round up the line. So that's what we've been working on. In addition, I'm also updating. They're not available yet. We're just starting on this. We're updating our lesson plans. And also, we have a book called Scenarios and Endorsements, which is probably one of the most valuable things you get your hands on. It's a book. There are currently 36 scenarios of student pilots, different categories, different classes, and it's the endorsing requirements for that, how to get a person, what's the training requirements, and what are the endorsement requirements? What do those look like? And so those are scenarios supported by text, which says the solution, along with where it's appropriate. We put in flow charts to walk you through each of the regulations that go down that way, because some of these regulations talk to each other, they whisper to each other. So I've updated that. So instead of 36 scenarios, there's now 50 something. So I put an additional 18, which covers sport pilots and recreational pilots in there as well. So, and I made some changes to that. And so I've cleaned all the stuff up for typos. That was a big deal. There were 400 and some typos. So sorry about that, but we will get there. So that's being worked on right now. Okay, so then what I will tell you, all that stuff is going to be in the chat too. So if you want that kind of thing or you're interested in that kind of thing, there's that. We do offer remote ground instruction. And what that means is you'd be paired up with one of our CFI Bootcamp instructors, because this stuff you're into, if it's plain vanilla stuff like you're a student pilot, okay, I think you don't really need a lot of extra ground from any. I think it's okay. But if you're studying the CFI thing or double I thing, this is a mountain of work. And most people who are doing the teaching of this, if you have a school, they don't know anything. They don't really know enough about it. They know, like if you ask them about the fundamentals of instructing, that's not what they do every day. So they don't know really anything about it. They'll have the book open while you're talking, going like, okay, look, I'm saying about the right thing there. But there's no real true understanding of the content. And the same with these endorsements and scenarios, and the same with, it goes on, because most flight instructors are just doing training, doing what? Student pilots, private pilots, a flight review. airplane checkout, maybe a commercial now and then. Maybe they do instrument rating, they could do that, but they're not doing they're not doing the CFI thing. So that's why specialized training is kind of important, that we get there, because that's what we're good at. And so I have a team of our authorized instructors who do that. So if you're in need of that, there's to be something in the chat there. And I think Rex is in the room, and I think Nick, you can open him up if you want to. And let's let him talk for a second. So let's see. Is Rex here?
Rex is not with us today.
Not with us today. Okay. Well, Rex Scholl is one of the people that's on our team, and he's probably doing some flights, but he's a glider CFI as well as an airplane CFI, about 4,000 hours, backcountry pilot. He also does initial CFIs with us. He teaches some of our CFI class. He's outstanding. And so this is the kind of caliber of people that we have. We have Ricky Martella, who's from the assistant chief at a big 141 school here, does initial CFI training. We don't have junior people. So there's no one here who's like 2 years and 200 hours. No such thing. You find people with thousands and thousands of hours and years, sometimes decades of experience, right? With this exact information. So that's what's there. Okay, I'm going to go back into the show here. If there's anything I missed, Nick, you'll tell me, but I think I got it. Okay, so let's move on. Let's take a look at this using a sim for VFR ratings. So I don't think we have any arguments about the benefits of procedural training. I mean, that means like if you want to learn how to use a checklist, or you want to, I don't know, you want to not pre-flight, but get the airplane ready for start. I think you can do all that in the flight training device, and that translates pretty well to the airplane. And certain things don't. So it's easy to save money by learning and performing the procedural parts of training. A lot of it you can do with the flight training device even off. Even they may not like that, but you could maybe, right? So but from a procedural aspect, I think we can all pretty much agree that doing those things, yeah, will save money. Now, it's more difficult to save money by learning and performing the tactile skills, because the flight training devices in VFR don't necessarily replicate that very well. Like we talked about the control forces, especially, and the view outside, especially low to the ground, right? So in those cases, we have to weigh the benefit of the training device. We say, well, if it's normally going to take us an hour and a half to learn this new maneuver in the airplane, that's how long it's going to take us. If we put the sim in the way and we say, let's go there first, right, so we can get all the procedures down, how much less time will it take us on the airplane, and has that been worth it? Now, on a day where it's weathered out, probably really worth it, right? Because we're going to salvage a lesson, and we're going to make because there's an economic component of this too for you flight instructors, right? But you do have to weigh that when I go out to the airplane. What is going to be the benefit to the student, right? So there's that. Now, Part 141 schools can log 15% of the course of training flight time through a private pilot certificate in an AATD, so somewhere significant amount of time. So under Part 61, but under Part 141, you can. So let's move on and talk a bit more about that here. If you want to log to the IFR, I think this makes the most sense, right? This would be obvious, right? 20 hours can be logged towards the instrument rating under Part 61. And so what I'm a big proponent of is using the flight training device first, right? And do the first 20 hours of the rating in the flight training device, and do everything you can get done in 20 hours, and more if you can. More if it takes longer, I should say. Not more if you can, but more if it takes longer. And then you can look at the AATD, you can look at the letter of authorization, the LOA, that lets you know what you can log, what's possible to log in the AATD, what's approved, right? So you have to have that ready. And then when you're training a procedure, like let's talk about holding or something that's got a lot of moving parts to it, you can just freeze the altitude. Because really, the very first thing you want to get down, you want to take all the clumsiness out of it, right? You want to say, well, yes, this sim is quite sensitive, so let's just get rid of it, and let's go to the procedure, right? So freeze the altitude, etc., or just use the autopilot, right? So you can do that. The other thing is, ready? Teach how to use the autopilot first. So let that be the model of good behavior, because once you've taught something and you say, okay, to the student, we're going to let the autopilot do this approach. This is how you should be doing it. This thing it's doing is how you should be doing it. And then the student has time to look at it and appreciate it and then start talking, say, describe what the autopilot's doing, what you would do when you got to the fix, what would happen. What kind of hold entry would you make? Then they have time, they have bandwidth as opposed to, trying to keep up with this overly sensitive flight training device. So the common complaint is it's more sensitive than the airplane, the sim is, and it is because it's not modeled as well, right? Especially with the momentum of the airplane. And I say to use iPad apps in many cases when it's a procedural thing. And I'm going to show you those in just here about another minute, I think. I'm probably going to show you that. Here we go. So if you use iPad apps instead of the AATD, you don't need to book or pay for the time using it. Now, you still charge for your time. So you're going to pay a very small amount of money, use CFIs, and to get a lot of benefit. You're still billing as if you were in the flight training device because you're still offering instruction. But the student is not paying anything for the app that or $10 or not much. And these are good for like teaching VOR, bearing pointers, HSI tracking, training, this kind of thing. Good to show the effect of wind, DME arcs, holding procedures. All that can be done in these apps that I'm going to show you, right? And I think you're really going to like these because I love them. There you go. I use them all the time. So here's one of them. It's called NavTrainer. So I'm just going to bring them up on my iPad here, and then you can be able to see them as well. So give me 1 second to get that going. Hopefully iPad will cooperate. It didn't really like today. Today was a bad day for iPad. I may have to be going back to the Apple Store, another 3 hours at the Apple Store. Okay, here we go. Well, I think we'll get through it. Let's give it a go. So via AirPlay, that's correct. Okay, I'm sharing the iPad just so you know what I'm doing. Okay, that's my Zoom. So far, so good. Let's just say that. Let's see. Ching, we're on. We're in. That's good. Okay. So these apps I'm going to show you, I'm not going to show you everyone. I'm just going to show you the ones that I find to be the absolute most beneficial. This is called NavTrainer. They're in the presentation, by the way, so you don't have to write them down or anything like that. I have them all in there for you. Let me show you that app. Here it is. It's made by Pilots Cafe. And here's my VOR trainer at the top. And I'm going to make this into a VOR here. So let me zoom out. Now I'm going to show you how dead easy this thing is. This is why I like it. I like it because you can fly it. That's correct. But you don't have to worry about obstacles, altitudes, any of that. It's a procedural thing. So you got two VORs. Here's the first one. Here's the second one. Here's a heading indicator. Here's the plane. And I can do several things with just my finger. So if I just push on top of that airplane, I can push and hold it and move it around. I can do that, right? Easy. If I want to move the VORs around, I do the same thing. I can do that. I can move them anywhere I'd like. That. Okay, if I don't like the VOR, if I want to use an HSI, there's a toggle button here. I can go there, I got an HSI. If I want a fixed card ADF, I press it again. And if I want an RMI or a bearing pointer, like it's in the G1000, there's a bearing pointer. So all these things are like quick to get. Now let's just look at it. So you can see that I have, this is the area, this is the zone between the to from flag right here. And you'll notice that is if I turn the OBS on the top, you'll see that the to from flag is going to change, right? In fact, if I get right there, it will change the other side, right? So I can show that the to from flag is just a mechanical switch. It doesn't really do, it's always 90 degrees to what's selected at the top. Then I can show how to track it. So for example, I would say, let's go north, right? Center up this needle on that, whatever that is, that thing. And then I'm going to choose the fly button right here. And so I have a speed here. I've set it's 120 knots, and I can see that I could turn on the contrail, so I can see my track. It will show me. So I could do that. For example, I could say turn the contrail there on because I have those on already. I could also turn the wind on, and I can set the wind down here. So 090 at 29. So there's going to be a bit of drift here, right? So I can do that. I can teach a student how to bracket. I can say approximate a heading to intercept, let them see what the needle does, then start bringing it in the other way, then keep getting finer and finer and finer until you get the number that we want. So all that can be done. I can teach holding procedures with this. I can say, for example, hold northeast on the 045 radio, right turns 1 minute legs. That's a teardrop entry right there. I can look at it instantly on my heading indicator and know. And I can say what heading in to turn to on that. You just say, well, 30 degrees up from 045, whatever that's going to be when I get there. And I'll do that for a minute, turn back. So you can teach holding with this thing, right? You can teach wind correction and wind drift, all with this app. You can say, this is no longer a VOR. This is a bearing pointer. So I want to track inbound on the 360 bearing to the station. There it is, right? I want to also do a DME arc. So I would like to arc right now. I'm 3.6 miles away. I think we're still going. So I want to turn the wind off for this example. I want to arc on the 2.5 on 2.5, and I want to arc to the east with a bearing pointer, right? So there's three, okay, 2.5, a starter turn now about a half mile at this speed. I'm just going to put the bearing pointer 90 degrees to my to where I was initially, and that will keep me at about 2 miles. So or 2.5, I should say, which is what I wanted. I made a standard rate turn with a little device over here. Okay, that happened for just a second so we can make sure that it's working for us. And I can say, okay, now you can see that's pretty obviously easy to do with RMI. What about a VOR then? So then we can look at it, say turn 10, twist in, and we can go through that whole thing. All on the ground without having the simisms in the way, nothing. And this is a $10 app, okay? $10, that's it. You can also show how, let's quit this. You can say, well, I would like to know why an HSI can reverse sense. When can an HSI reverse sense? Only in two cases. So here's the first case. This is a localizer, right? So this doesn't matter. This is not a radial. So it doesn't matter what you put up here on the regular VOR indicator. If I go there, it shows me fly right. If I go and if I go here, fly left on the beam. If I put it anywhere else, it'll do exactly the same thing. It doesn't matter, right? So best practice, set it there. Now let's put the HSI there. Now have a look. So if I have front course selected, 090 is right up there. Okay, now go that way. Fly right, perfect. Fly left, yes. But what if I get it the wrong way around on the HSI? Maybe I put the back course up. Now you see the whole instrument flipped. And therefore, it's going to reverse sense. So now it's giving me reverse sensing. So an HSI will reverse sense when you have the front course. You're flying the front course and you have the back course selected, or you're flying the back course and you have the front course selected. So we can go through that like quite easily, right? All right, so let's move on to a different app. So that's just a taste of it. We're going to use HoldTrainer, made by the same company. It's this one here. Again, they're already the logos. I had this in there, so in the presentation, so you don't have to search. You'll know it's the right one. So let's move on to this one. So I can show you how to hold. But you know, there's a whole stage in ASA's syllabus on holding. I can teach you to hold in an hour, and you could make any hold and all the time. In 1 hour, you'd be able to do it. And you'd be able to give any hold as well to a fix. You'd be able to give any hold within 10 seconds. Right? I know why people make holding hard, but you know, they do. So here, hold south. Okay, I was going to make a right turn example. That's okay. It doesn't really matter. Hold south over the VHP VOR on the 187 radial. So down here, 187 radial, make left turn. So if I slice this thing up with left turns, it'd be like that's teardrop, that's parallel, that's direct sector. This is a direct entry, right? So there's that. And I can visualize it. Okay, then we say, okay, let's turn that off. Let's pick another one. Okay, hold west over that's another direct entry. So let's move past that so we get something better. Okay, this is kind of a good one. Well, that's not, I don't want the bearing front. Just VORs to make it easy for today. Sorry. Hold southeast. Down there again. Okay. You get something to the top. Hold south. Not that way. We likes those today. 260. This will work. Okay. Now this one is hold west over the JFK VOR on the 263 radial. So 263 is like 250 around here. So that's on the border of being on the border, not quite the border. So you draw a line here and that. This is how we do it. So that's going to be this one over here. It's going to be a parallel entry, right? And then you can visualize it. So you can have the student go through these. Now I just did that. I'm not teaching you how to hold, unfortunately. But I'm sure you want that for those of you who want to know how you can hold. I can give any hold I want. Like I could say, give me a hold that will cause me to hold teardrop. Well, that's anything over in this sector. So I say hold northeast on the 030 radial where it turns. This is parallel. Anything over here, this is direct down here. I can give it instantly, right? I have to even think about it. Okay, so that's another one. So let's leave that app and go to another one. God, there's a lot of apps here. So I use the GTN trainer. It's up here by Garmin. It's the most expensive app. It's probably $25 or more. But I'm teaching avionics. So when I'm teaching avionics, teaching this stuff, how much am I charging? Am I charging $25 a day? I don't think so. I'm gonna be using this thing for like ever. So let me tap onto it. iPads have a little bit of an issue, but it's okay. So then we can step through it. This is an exact simulation of that thing. So let's see. So I can show how to use any of this. I can say, let's go to the moving map. Let's pinch and zoom. It's fully functional. So what can I do? I need the airplane for this? No. So I save the student an enormous amount of money. Then they can go home and do stuff with it, use the manual, and I can show them best practices. I have fully functional controls here. And I also can fly it if I want to. I can change the speed, I can change the altitude, and I can change the heading. Okay, so this is and there's many of these. I have this thing for the NXI, the TXI stuff for that's not available for the 530s, 430s, but those things are falling out of favor anyway. I mean, they're still around, but we don't have only a Windows simulator is available for those. And I'm not a Windows person, as you probably can tell. Okay. Your Windows, right? There's a TXI trainer just for the heck of it. I'll show you. It's good enough. Oh, bomb again. Oh, nice. He likes to bomb. Bombing is good. Oh, bomb. Okay, TXI. Now I'm gonna have to do my iPad stuff. Okay. So here we go. Continue. And everything's functional. I can zoom in and out on this thing here. I can do everything. And who doesn't want this? This is $25. So you can see I have an investment of like $75 worth of Garmin stuff. Who cares? If 75 bucks is hard for you, this is the wrong business for you. That's all I have to say. It's like this, you're in the wrong line of work, right? Okay, here you go. And there's also over here we have a GPS trainer as well. Garmin has GPS. And the other thing we have here is made by Simeonic. Now you talk about a real savings. How much is a G1000? Like a 172 G1000 per hour. Two something, right? At least two something. Maybe even upwards of three, depending on if it's new or not. Have a look. I'll have a look here. Okay. There's a trainer at top. It's called G1000 PFD by Simeonic. Didn't bomb. Look at that. Okay, so this is a fully functional G1000 PFD, and currently I can put the bezel on. So I don't want to download. So I can fly it. So let me just get that going. Just for a second. And you can see I can fly in just a second. I'm going to get some speed on it here. Are you scared? I'm scared. There you go. Ooh, that's scary right there. That was scary as hell right there. All right. And I can turn the bezel on here. Second. Yeah. And I can put the autopilot on over here. AP. There you go. I can put it in heading mode or roll mode or whatever I want to do. So currently, let's put the heading mode. And let's check some altitude. That's good enough. We'll just stay right here. I can't get the button to press correctly. Yeah, I'm having a little trouble with iPad, but it works fine. Believe me. But anyway, all the controls are functional. So if I just go like this for a second and I go to the PFD, it'll have all the PFD controls there. I can change the wind vector, arrows, vectors. I can do all kinds of things there. So I can do anything. Almost anything with the G1000 I can do with this. Okay, let me turn this shit off here. So Mr. iPad is not liking today. So that's fine. He doesn't have to like today. So with just a few apps, I'm able to basically salvage a lesson and make a lesson better. I'm actually able to show a student how to hold before they go on the flight training device. I don't need a whole stage to do that. I need 3 lessons. That's all I need to get you to hold. So I can show you how to hold non-published, published, intersection, non-intersection, wherever you need. And then I can also show you how to hold with bearing pointers. So in DME arcs, all in about 3 lessons. Okay. So that's what we can get out of it. So let's go back to our presentation because we're beginning to get towards the end of the game here. And again, the copy of the presentation is is already in the chat, and you also get it by email as well. So you have that. So let me then change the share here. back to the presentation. We can finish up and get on with it. Okay, here we go. Here's the presentation. Okay, so this again is in the you have this already, so you don't have to take a picture of it or anything. It's already in the chat for you. Uh, that's the Simeonic I just showed you. You can also buy a bezel, which I don't have, but that's my wish list. So because that's a full functioning bezel, and with that you have tactile feel, which is really good. But it's $700 or maybe a little more for the bezel, and then this app is like 25. So the app is quite affordable. It's just a bit tricky to get. You need the Apple Pencil. I could describe it, but basically the buttons are a bit on this thing to work. But on this thing, everything's functional. So you can also get one for the MFD if you want, but I don't find that necessary to do those both at the same time. So anyway, that's what you can get for there. Now, making the sim more realistic is kind of what we're on. Again, it's a fidelity, right? So Pilot Edge is a company that uses air traffic controllers in various, I think they have, I don't know how many, but I'll say at least 3 areas that are modeled. I know Los Angeles area is modeled correctly, and Phoenix, I believe, and some will pick some other places. And so they have controllers who can give you instructions uh, from those locations, and they can see you on their GPS, right? And they can give you real vectors to whatever approaches are there. They can give you coding instructions, and you can practice radio communication, VFR, IFR, and it's not too expensive. It's a monthly subscription. And this is a really great thing because you're hearing like people who, at least air traffic controllers, or who can be uh, uh, good enough to be air traffic controllers, and that gives the full on thing that people worry mostly about. They worry about radio communications a lot, and in particular. So, and this feature here is another thing. This is within this is Redbirds, but all these sims are going to have. They usually will have a way to broadcast basically a simulated location by simulating a GPS signal that ForeFlight, the iPad will pick up, and that ForeFlight will then put as a blue dot, so you can geo-reference in your location. So those things, you can start combining those things. You're starting to get a really realistic training environment, right? And then you truly can save money in the airplane and get a way better produced pilot than having to try to find the opportunities to. You could tell the air traffic controller to make mistakes on this flight. Just make mistakes at certain moments, and let my student let me see if I can identify where the mistakes are. That you can't get that in the real world, right? So now instructors who avoid sims, let's talk about that. We got about 5 minutes here, 4 minutes to go. CFIs aren't logging any flight time when they're using an AATD or sim. So there's no WIFM here for them. The WIFM, you know what that means? What's in it for me? So instructors building time typically really avoid using them, even though they're available, because they don't get any time out of it. They have 1,500 hours minus whatever today is in an airplane. If it's a sim, there's 0 that goes in there. So they want to do it. So they want to get to the airplane. So you really want to make sure that if there's a flight training device at your school, that you're able to use it, and your flight instructor actually wants to use it, right? Because you can really save a lot of time and money and get a lot better understanding using a flight training device. Okay, so that's what I would say. So I'm not saying all people who are time building are doing that, but a fair number of them are. So it's all about me. It's when do I get out of here? Okay, now fixes for more sim time. So how would we be able to do that? Wings credit, I see, by the way, is in the chat. So if you're a 141 school, if you're at a 141 school, see that the sim time is in the syllabus and not optional. See that it's required. So go to that school, because all the time building CFIs that are in those academies aren't going to want to use the sim. You go to Wayman Aviation here, there's 2 Redbird sims, and they get used very rarely. But when they're embedded in the course, they have to get used. So that's what you really want to get. Find a dedicated sim instructor or facility. Now, this is difficult because it's location dependent, right? So in the bottom there, you see a guy named Michael Phillips, and he's specialized at one time in he's an exceptional instructor, by the way. Camarillo, California. I mean, exceptional. Let me just go off about that. He's one of the most incredible flight instructors I know. Him, Greg Brown, these are some really good people. Dorothy Schick, these are some awesome. Rex Scholl, one of our guys, another guy. I could go on about them. They should be in the Hall of Fame. So anyway, that's what he specializes. He specializes a lot in sim time, and he really does a good job at it. So look, you can look for that if it's near you. These are the apps I told you that would work for you. NavTrainer by Pilots Cafe, it's about $10. HoldTrainer is a bundle. I think you can get those together for some amount of money. Uh, it's not Simeonic at about 20 something for this one down here. And the GT of these trainers, last time I looked, they were around $25 or so. So that's what those are. And the bezel for that one looks like that is about 700. So, but I think about it, and if I'm doing a lot of G1000 training, how long is it going to take me to recoup that investment? Very, very, very short time. It's not going to take a long time. So if I'm doing enough training, if I'm not doing enough training in it, either I'm in the wrong location for the training that's not necessary in the location where I suck at it, I'm no good at it, and everybody knows it. That could be, or I don't want to do it, or there's not enough instrument students. That's kind of the reasons, right? So that's that. So that's what those are. Now the question is, last question is, do home simulators help? And the answer is yes. In fact, very much yes. Uh, X-Plane makes an exceptional simulator. You can hook up those Simeonic things, iPad to it. Same with Microsoft Flight Simulator has a representation of the G1000. And I can tell you the experiment that was done. And the experiment that was done was if a person learns to land the airplane in the sim, would it translate into the airplane? And the answer was almost yes. It wasn't that far off. There were some things they had to get used to, but they could do it. So, and did it teach a lot of bad habits? Yes, but the benefit of what they learned was way better. They could already use VOR. They could already use a lot of things when they come into flight school. So the last thing I would say is about this is I didn't myself, but I was participated in studies, research at NASA Ames. We talked about motion and was it really necessary? And so we took commercial pilots, instrument rating, took airline pilots, we took a bunch of people, we ran them through simulators there. And we found out that motion didn't really matter. We found not that much. It wasn't enough to have a whole building built to house your sim. What was most important were the graphics and the control field. If we put you in the 747-400 sim and we turned off the motion, and then we could have as many people as we want in the cab, right? We don't have to have a seatbelt for everybody. So then start to turn to the right, everybody come up, person hold on the wall because it looks so realistic. They felt they were turning. So that was way more powerful than the actual motion, which sometimes isn't modeled very well. Okay, so we're going to open up the room here. I'm sure we have a lot to say about that, and I have more to say about. I could talk about this subject for days on end because I did a lot of stuff in this region. And then I was hoping to have Redbird on, but I couldn't get them in time. So we'll have another one. We'll have Redbird and maybe, probably Redbird on because I really like those guys. And girls. They're fantastic company. The sim is like I tell them, I say, I'm going to make you mad, but I'm going to tell you anyway. It says it feels like I'm in my living room. Not a real airplane when I'm in it, but the technology you guys are using, the way you're pushing it, and what we're getting out of it, and I can deal with being in the living room. Okay, that's that. And they do such a great job. I'll be speaking at Redbird Migration on March the 3rd, 4th of this coming month. If you're going to be in Lakeland, I'll be there talking about teaching the hard things in CFI training, right? How to teach the hard stuff. So I have breakout sessions there. All right. That's what I got to say. I'm going to see you next week, same time, same station.